Hi, everybody. Welcome to our third and final installment of Geocortex Show and Tell. Thank you so much for joining us this morning or this afternoon or on recording via our YouTube channel in the future. I'm Lisa Cottrell, brand manager at Vertigis. Happy to have you here. Let's jump in right away. A little bit of etiquette to start out with. A reminder that these are 15-minute presentations with 5 minutes for questions at the end of each presentation. We ask that you please write your questions in the question box. After the presentation is over, my colleague Shane Moore, our digital marketing manager at Vertigis, will be moderating questions. We do have the ability to unmute ourselves, so at the end of the webinar, if you'd like to have further discussion with our panelists or presenters or the team here, you can do so by unmuting yourself and asking questions. If we don't have time to get to all the questions that are submitted into the question box, I will be following up with our presenters after the webinar to make sure that you get those questions answered. If you're watching this recording and you have questions, please email us. And a call out, we're looking forward to running this series again in the fall, and we're looking for customers to demonstrate their applications. So if you would like to join us in the fall and show us the great work you've been doing, please send me a note. Today's presenters are Jake Brown from the City of Portland, who's going to show us some great work they're doing in combination with AirBNB. Andrew Vitale from the Village of Niles, who's going to show us their Atlas application. And then finally, we have our CTO, Drew Millen, and a product manager, Cam Barnard, talking about Geocortex and specifically about the beginnings of the move from the HTML5 viewer to Geocortex Web. So without further ado, I'll pass it to Jake, who's going to jump into his application for us.
Hey, everybody. Let's set up here. All right. So I thought I'd start off by saying that we are over here at the City of Portland. We've been running Geocortex Essentials for around five years or so, and we have our legacy app that's kind of our kitchen sink app that has all of our editing environments for our Bureau development services. That's where we edit addresses and buildings and other things. So we're kind of transitioning that to Geocortex Web where we can, and instead of having one monolithic app that includes all of our workflows, we're piecing everything out to focused apps. So the one that I'm going to be talking about today is our short-term rental edit app. So what this app allows us to do is really, I'll give a little bit more context about the situation that the problem that we're trying to solve over here in Portland. And it has to do with a explosion in the short-term rental market, namely AirBNB. So Portland's seen a lot of people creating what are called accessory dwelling units and listing those on AirBNB, as well as houses that were, used to be in the rental market, and now they're in the short-term rental market. So we like to publish data out to the world through our portlandmaps.com website, and we have a number of reports. One of those reports is our short-term rental permits. So these are all of the permits that are legal, that a citizen has gone through the permitting process with our Bureau, Bureau Development Services. It's the Permitting Bureau for Portland. And there is a discrepancy between things that are legal and things that are listed on AirBNB. So that kicked off a audit. That audit results came back that, hey, only 22 of the listings that were sampled were properly permitted. So we then began, Portland then began talking to AirBNB about, hey, how can we go through and help get all of these listings legal? And from there, we created something called the pass-through registration. I realize this is a lot of text, we'll just kind of walk through it a little bit, just for context. Really what we came up with was Airbnb didn't want to, they wanted to provide a path forward for their customers, their hosts who are wanting to list their houses on Airbnb. So what they did is they altered their listing process where they started directing users through a registration process. So if you list something on Airbnb starting in December of 2019 for the city of Portland, it's going to ask you a series of questions about, hey, do you have an existing permit? What's the listing address? All that information gets fired back to, gets made available to us through a API. So the Airbnb hosts an API where we can pull in all of these registrations that are in flight and process those against our data that we have in our permitting system. In addition to the registration information, they also provide us monthly transactions. All this stuff is encrypted and secure, and no financial information is included in it. But we process that information. We process the registrations every night. We process the listing information monthly, or excuse me, the transaction information monthly. So as registrations are created, we on the city side, we need to walk those registrations through a fairly complicated process of getting that permit worked through or getting that registration worked through our permit system. And we also want to send Airbnb back information, we call that response codes, that tells Airbnb, hey, this this registration didn't provide a good address, or the address was outside of our jurisdiction, and we pass them back a response code. So all the getting and setting of the API is done through Python on a nightly basis. But the Geocortex Web app helps us not only visualize all this data, but we use workflows to, if a registration needs a little help or needs some manual intervention, needs a human, can't be scripted through a stored procedure, the short-term rental edit app facilitates the setting of that information. So this is a complex diagram. That was a wall of text. Let's just see what all this stuff looks like, because a lot of it just distills down to putting data on a map. So what you're seeing here is our registration information from Airbnb. This is a Geocortex Web mapping application. And the newer versions of Geocortex Web, they introduced a much more flexible way to create an application layout. We added these are called KPIs on the right-hand side. We'll focus on these a little bit later. But the application organizes the registration data and presents it to the user, and then the user can see what stuff they need to focus on specifically. So the app has makes use of workflows and filter workflow, a fairly common type of workflow. The filter workflow will help us organize or restrict what information is important, so the user's not overwhelmed and not hunting around for the things they need to see. So again, the customer for this web app is the Bureau of Development Services. We have a property compliance team that wants to usher these listings through this, or these registrations through the system, as well as we have teams that are involved with sending out paper applications to each of these registrations that we get from Airbnb. So we're kind of a couple different use cases here, but we're trying to get these records that haven't been all the way through the system. And I should also add that one of the things that makes this process so complex is we give people, there's like a 60-day shot clock involved. So if somebody doesn't have all of the paperwork in order, or the application hasn't made sufficient progress in our permitting system, we can automatically set that response code and send that response code back to AirBNB, and it's effectively delisted. So let's go ahead and do some clicking around on this app. If I click on a single record here, there's all sorts of cool stuff that we can do. So we can, if we need to flag that record for further review, this is a workflow that just simply sends off an email to the person who's actually going to be performing that edit, as well as we can update more details. So this is a person who has a little bit more permissions. This is all secured to a portal group. That person would have the ability to crosswalk this registration to a specific permit if they've done some research and know what that permit number is. Again, we try to automate as much of this stuff as possible, but because we're not getting perfect addresses from AirBNB and we're kind of dealing with user-provided data, some of that stuff doesn't line up 100%. Likewise, if the another thing that we use is in workflow, you have the ability to kind of dynamically render forms based on other attribute data. And we found that really helpful, because whenever we're marching through this PDF and we know that a registration is here, well, we really only want to give the user the ability to set these response codes, not all response codes. So that was really handy for us. Another thing that we have is we've used the reporting tools. I'll go ahead and you can just generate a report by clicking registration report. Through the magic of television, I have a report already created. And the reporting tools are super powerful. They're a little intimidating to use just because of the complexity. But what we have here is we've created some links that link back to the short-term rental edit map and pull up a specific record. We also have links to our Portland Maps system. You see that there. And let's see. We also have links that pull together all the AirBNB listing data. So this is difficult data to relate, but if there's a registration on the same tax lot, there can be multiple listing IDs. So you can click on this and get the, I don't know if that particular link worked. It should key you up to that exact listing ID. Some of these have already been removed though. So if you click on that and you get the main AirBNB page, that link was actually removed from their system. As well as we have summary transaction data. And really that's helpful for us because we want to know more of the guest count for all that stuff. So I'm just going to switch gears now to show you some more of the Geocortex Web, these dashboard capability. So you'll notice as I'm going to unfilter this map. Clear filter. So as I zoom in, these counts on the right-hand side change. Well, that's really cool. How do you do that? The recent version of Geocortex Web, I don't know if anybody attended last week's session, the map component now has some events that are exposed. And these events are super cool. You can tie them to workflows and then have your workflow update your KPIs as changes are made to the data. So I'll just talk a little bit more about that just because it was a really interesting capability for me. Maps are great, but just having these summary counts here with all the different things going on with this data set, it gives our users the ability to kind of see at a glance how much work is in their queue. So this is this is the workflow that we run every time the map extent is changed. And one of the things that's interesting, Patrick Fingler helped me out with this. We actually don't use the out-of-the-box capability for KPIs. Because we have a larger data set, thousands of records, we actually wired it up to use the ArcGIS server out statistics. And that means that this workflow runs a lot faster whenever you're dealing with a larger data set. All right. So the circling back, I'm going to show you one cool feature. This is probably the thing that I was most excited about because it's pretty satisfying. Light and dark themes. How do you pick? We did a special version of this switch to dark mode, and it'll actually switch out the base map. Thought that was pretty cool. So this map helps us organize all of the AirBNB registration information, and ultimately gets we automate everything that we can to work these permits down the permitting line. Where things need some manual help, we create a workflow that facilitates the editing of the response codes, and anytime that we need to crosswalk something that fell off of the normal automated route, these workflows help us do that. Right. And voila, after all the response codes are set, we push all that stuff back to AirBNB. We have a glut of data in our system right now because this is a new app and a new process for us. But eventually, as things we work through the initial data set, everything should hum along nicely. And with that, I think that is all I have to share.
Thanks, Jake. That's awesome. I have to say, this is probably one of the most beautiful apps I've ever seen. Like, it's like so, I mean, I'm in marketing, so here I go, but it's like so visually appealing. You guys have done a great job. I love that Geocortex Web allows for this type of like custom branding and layout. And yeah, the yellow is great, and the night mode. Good work. Great work.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass it over to Shane, who's going to take a look and see if we have any questions for you.
Yeah, we have one question and one comment for you right now, Jake. I'll start with the question. So someone was asking, do the hyperlinks that you provide in your reports, do they open out to a new page or not?
I don't know. We should check. These don't appear to, but I think we just have to set it so the to target blank. Just modify the HTML there.
Okay. Next question we have: what permitting software do you use?
We use Amanda from Caliterra. We've been using Amanda for 20 some odd years, so it's well, I won't say anymore. It's been the integration with it is not as straightforward because it's an Oracle database, but yeah, it works.
Okay, that's it for questions for now. We do have one again. Nick Francino is kind of reiterating what Lisa said, so lots of kudos on your app design there.
Thank you.
So if anyone wants to chat with Jake, I've shared his email in the chat window, or you can stick around after the formal presentations are over and actually ask a question and have a conversation. So thank you so much again, Jake. That's just beautiful. It's gorgeous. Now, for your viewing pleasure, we have Andrew Vitale from the Village of Niles. Andrew, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Everybody can hear me there okay, I assume?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, I really appreciate joining everybody today. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on wherever you are. My name is Andrew Vitale. I'm the GIS coordinator for the Village of Niles. Niles is a suburb immediately adjacent to the city of Chicago, just on the north and west side of the city, as you can see here. And because of our situation, kind of places us in a couple of different challenging scenarios. Myself, particularly as the GIS coordinator, I'm the only GIS service provider throughout the village. We're a population of about 30,000, so not really a very large village, but I do have about 250 to 300 plus individual users that I support, and that certainly sets up a lot of challenges for my efficiency, and I really have to use my time effectively. And that's part of what brings me to our Atlas application. I know that it has been very, very common over the last few years, and I completely agree with the industry's direction moving towards focused applications and applications that are meant to do individual tasks for those people responsible for pieces of data. What I have found though, and again, because I'm the only service provider, I have found that many users still require and still like to use what I call a kitchen sink app. They still like to use one application by which they can at least view and see everything in one place. So I've decided to develop Atlas for that purpose alone. It's really just meant to view information and get people kind of a background taste. So this is not going to be anything drastically new to people. We've seen applications as different layers pop up as you zoom in and out. And I have found that what a lot of users truly enjoy is that layer catalog where they can then scroll through and they can find a variety of many, many other types of layers. I've chosen these different categories. It has been hugely, hugely popular with a lot of different layers of my users, from my administrative types, my department heads, even field crew workers have really found this to be very, very, very helpful. So what I'd like to do is lead you through one of the scenarios by which Atlas has been used specifically by one user to great effectiveness. And again, this is just a fairly simple, I'll put that term in quotes, a fairly simple essential site, meaning I have not done an awful lot of configuration. This is very much a tool that is straight out of the box. So again, because the Village of Niles is a fairly older suburb, we do have a couple of challenges, and one of those has been in a very aging infrastructure. I'm going to sign into the application here, and you'll notice that what you previously saw, a public view, and what you're going to see here, a private view, my tools have expanded out, my layer list has expanded out, so now as a village employee, I get access to much more information. One of our challenges, an aging infrastructure, occasionally stormwater flooding issues, and things like that. So this was something that my sewer supervisor particularly was very, very concerned about. And in this scenario, we have been building up information about our sewer layers for a number of years. We have begun to map out individual structures and how things are connected, what is unique about them, and that kind of thing. Again, very helpful and very popular, but it's pretty visual. It's pretty standard. Over the last 3 years, we've been collecting a series of information about our sewer televising and the conditions observed as part of that sewer televising effort. So my sewer supervisor, over 3 years, he has inspected every single sewer main, and the question that was posed to him now was, which sewer mains do we think we should be replacing first, second, and third? So as part of those sewer layers that I made available, I had a little bit of work history here so we can easily tell, based on what is highlighted, which one of these sewer mains has inspections. I've also chosen to make every single condition observed available as well. So now you can see not only what has been inspected, but how many conditions on each one of those sewer mains has been seen. Well, this was a little too much for him, but he just decided, okay, so I want to actually pare this down a little bit. I want to look at only those sewer conditions that were observed that involved a crack in the main. This could potentially represent, of course, a sewer main that is going to be not only faulty, but should be replaced first. So I made, in looking at filtering through this information, I made just a couple of saved filters to help myself out here today. And these are closed caption TV observations that involve multiple fractures. And in looking at this, we've whittled down these conditions. And you see here now, okay, so it's a little more manageable. I have 75 total conditions. Nice. But again, my sewer supervisor was concerned, okay, I know these conditions, but now I want to know which mains they actually occurred on. Okay. First things first, actually, he wanted to look at, first things first, he wanted to look at these conditions. So let me just grab these here. So when he saw this, he said, okay, so now I can see that I have some sewer mains that have more than one observation of a fracture, which means, actually take this main is probably one of the best examples. One main observed at one time had 6 observations of separate fractures within a single run of just under 300 feet. Okay, this is definitely a problem. This main is absolutely one that should be replaced sooner than later. But then he said, okay, so I know that this sewer main needs to be replaced. What if I need to look up that actual video? I need to look up that actual inspection. Excuse me. So I'm just going to take a look at all of these sewer mains that fall within a buffer of those particular conditions. There are 44 of them. And when I get the information for that, second. Again, and again, now we can see the individual sewer main, and within the linked tables, because he does get access to all the linked tables within these tabs, he can tell that individual sewer main and the media label and the name of the video that he's looking for particularly, if he needed any further evidence as to why this main should be replaced. So that's a fairly quick run through, but the overall point of this is Atlas is not meant to be the only place everybody goes for everything, but it is the first place that people go to. They go to observe, ask some basic queries, do some basic analysis, and they get ideas. I can't tell you how many other project ideas have come to me and how many other focused apps have been developed because of things that people observe and some basic querying people have done through Atlas. It's become my flagship application. It's become the primary way people first have their look and feel into the GIS, and it's been hugely useful from an efficiency standpoint for me and for many others. As an example, that sewer supervisor example I just gave you, he figured out how to do that all on his own. I instructed people how to use Atlas and some of the functionalities within. They then went out on their own, grabbed their own layers, did their own analysis. He did all of that function work on his own. And I asked him just offhand, how long would it have taken you to put together those lists and determine which sewer mains to replace first if you were doing this without Atlas? And he said easily 3 weeks. And I did this in under 3 hours. So I think that just from those kinds of efficiencies, it has really proved its worth. And I think that will be just about it.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That's great. Shane, over to you. Is there questions for Andrew on the Atlas application?
Yeah, it looks like some questions are starting to come in. So first question for you, Andrew. For sewer asset management, do you leverage linear referencing in order to determine that level of criticality, just to determine that level so critically?
Yes, actually, all the observations are linear referenced on the back end. So all of our observations and all of our inspections were given to us by our contractors in access databases. We then leverage those access databases and reference them in Esri tools, and that's what I'm using to map here in Essentials.
Great. Next question. How did you develop your asset score model?
I'm sorry, the asset what?
Your asset score model.
Oh, that was actually done as part of the contractor's work.
Okay, next question. Do you integrate this app with your CCTV software? Is it CUES, GraniteNet, WinCan? What do you use if for that CCTV component?
The short answer to that is no, not yet. We do use queues in-house. However, what we televise in-house is separate from what we contract out. So we will do some in-house televising. I have not yet interfaced that. I have not yet interfaced Atlas with that just yet, but that's the next step for this.
Great. Those 3 questions were all from Roland Shield, by the way. So the next question is from Ted Cronin. His question is, what is People Search?
It's a different tool, actually. That is one of the few larger workflows that I developed. People Search is just a function by which Village employees can search for people in any one of our Village managed databases. That includes our vehicle licensing, permit applications, senior center, fitness center, teen center, other things like that. So if people only have a name or a partial phone number or a partial address, they can use the People Search workflow and find which addresses those individuals are tied to.
Great. Last question here that I can see. We have a comment as well. But last question from Warren Rowe. We've also found a number of our users prefer the kitchen sink approach to map layers. Is attitude pervasive among your users, or is it a mix of attitudes?
Users like the kitchen sink, but I'm beginning to pull them away from the kitchen sink for those individually focused things that they need to do. So yes, I think users really like the kitchen sink app. That's what I have found. And what I've done is I've chosen to purposely limit some of the functionalities within the kitchen sink app. For example, the same sewer supervisor that I spoke about earlier, he's in charge of actually all underground utilities. I've made several apps available to his field crews for changing trees, swapping hydrants, valves, signs, things like that. So they can change statuses of certain assets, and that appears in many, many other applications and things like that. But I wouldn't want to put all that functionality into Atlas alone. In other words, I don't want to put every single egg in one basket. It just wouldn't be entirely appropriate.
Okay, great. Lisa, there's one more question that just popped up, and then I think we can move on if you want. But the last question is from Kate Weber. Her question, how many layers do you have in your map?
In Atlas itself? Kate, I think is what she's...
Sorry, yeah, Kate, if you wanted to clarify, you should be able to unmute yourself, although she just actually responded to me saying, yeah, that's correct.
You know, I've never actually counted it up. I know I'm probably at about 2.5 dozen services, so we're probably talking, you know, a little over 100 layers.
App here at the City of Bellevue as a kitchen sink app, and we have over 468, and we're looking at reducing it as well. And it does have limited functionality like yours does, and we use separate apps to kind of fill in the gaps of the functionality needed for the utility crews.
Yeah, and I actually, the number that I quoted is probably a little bit light only because I wasn't including what I've made in the catalog. Catalog has been a fantastic tool for a kitchen sink app, by the way, just stating that outright, in my opinion. So yeah, I've tried to limit what is here natively only to what is probably the most common and the most hot button issues for a variety of departments here. But yeah, I can't remember offhand the exact number of layers that I'm making available right now. Anything else?
I believe that's it. There's just a comment here, a couple comments, which we'll go through. So great use case of Atlas. That was a comment from Suzanne Baer. And then a comment from Nick Francino. It's a hybrid in our experience as well. He's with Los Angeles County. We have people with our main kitchen sink app, and then we have focused apps.
As much as I may like to, and as much as Esri may tell me that focused apps are the way to go, users just really prefer at least a single starting place, is what I'm finding.
Hey, this is Drew speaking here. I hope you don't mind if I chime in on this one. You know, I think there's absolutely no shame in a kitchen sink app, and in fact, I think they should be celebrated. I don't think it's a an or question, it's an and question. We want to create targeted and specific apps so that we can broaden the use of GIS for more specific use cases and different users that might be intimidated by such an interface. But I still see a strong relevance for apps like this, and we see them all over the place. I'd say, keep it going, keep it maintained, make sure it's performant, and there's definitely a place for these types of applications. I think it's a great use of GIS.
Thank you very much. I completely agree. Again, as an entry point and as a conversation starter, it has been invaluable. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Shane, do we have anything else before we move on?
Yeah, we have one last question from Roland Shield. Any plans to use the new profile enhancement to Geocortex 5?
Not at this time, not right now.
All right, straightforward. Thank you so much, Andrew. It's just like a lovely presentation, and I'm always just fascinated to hear some of those statistics around time saved. I think that's really powerful and something that we can all relate to, as you say, as we all have to do more with less. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now we will pass it over to Drew Millen, our CTO, and Cam Barnard, our product manager, to talk a little bit about taking GVH to Geocortex Web.
Absolutely.
Just give me a second while I make sure I show the right screen. How's that?
Is it the right screen or the correct screen, Drew?
It's actually both.
Oh, good.
If you're looking at the screen that I'm looking at from my position, it's the one on the right. So awesome. Hi everyone. Super thrilled to be able to join the webinar today and present this hot topic, I think, to you. In Cam and I want to take this opportunity to answer a question or some questions, plural, that we get frequently, more and more frequently these days. And they're short questions, but long answers. So this is the 15-minute version. There's probably a 1-hour version, and there's a version that requires poring over some documentation to get the more thorough response to. But let's start with the 15-minute version. Hopefully that will spark some conversation and some further discussion. The question that we're trying to answer is, why would we look at migrating from Geocortex Essentials to Geocortex Web? When would we look at migrating, and how? So that's what we're trying to do here. We'll spend 15 minutes on the subject. Yeah, and thanks again for the opportunity. So hopefully you can see the slides that I'm sharing. This is a picture of the Geocortex product portfolio today. It looks a lot different than the product portfolio we would have presented a couple of years ago, which would have had 2 products in it, Geocortex Essentials and Geocortex Analytics. So it's a different landscape and a totally different portfolio of products that we're producing and maintaining today with Geocortex. We carve these up into those that we classify as viewer frameworks and those that we classify as capabilities. And I also wanted to point out that most of the products that we see here have been released in their initial versions in the last few years. The only exception to that rule is Geocortex Essentials, which was released over a decade ago. So as you can see, we've been innovating quite rapidly and developing a totally new portfolio of products under the Geocortex brand. You can also see here that we're offering products today both in the on-premises scenarios that we have historically, but also in a new SaaS environment at apps.geocortex.com, which opens up a ton of new possibilities as well. So how has Geocortex evolved? Well, if we thought about Geocortex a few years ago, as I mentioned, we had analytics and essentials, and speaking specifically to essentials, it was a feature-rich, all-in-one viewer framework. A large application, piece of software you install on-premises in your enterprise environment and deploy any number of applications that you see fit out of that one piece of software. Today, modern Geocortex products and the mindset that we're looking at through this is kind of a microservices architecture. We've unbundled what were previously capabilities that were packed into one product into a suite of standalone products. And this enables a number of new use cases. We still create and maintain viewer frameworks, including Geocortex Essentials, but the new viewer frameworks are Geocortex Web and Geocortex Mobile. And then this suite of capabilities offers us the opportunity to bring them to new environments and offer them in different ways. So for example, you can use Geocortex Workflow in a web app builder application. It doesn't have to be a Geocortex viewer. You can also use a workflow in Geocortex Mobile. We describe them as portable or viewer agnostic. You'll see on the slide here that ArcGIS Experience Builder integration is coming as well. So we see that as being a viewer framework of choice for some customers in the coming months, years, and we want to be able to integrate our capabilities into that environment if you see purposes and uses of ArcGIS Experience Builder. What we want to make sure we're doing along this pathway here is ensure that all of our customers have a smooth transition to use these modern products. And so one of the ways that we're doing that is by making sure that they integrate with Geocortex Essentials. So your existing Geocortex Essentials 4X applications with the Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 can take advantage of these modern products. And indeed, many of the investments that we make in Geocortex Essentials itself come in the form of the development of these new products that integrate into it. So instead of adding a net new feature to Geocortex Essentials 4X, we're building a new product that has that portability tenant to it, but that can also be integrated back into Geocortex Essentials 4. And there's engineering work to make sure that that happens so that you can start to take advantage of these modern products within your existing applications. We've also done this, enabled this smooth transition through license entitlements. So Geocortex Essentials licensees are entitled to use the modern products, and there's product edition upgrades available if you want to use those capabilities outside of your Geocortex viewer environment, for example. So then if we're looking at Geocortex Essentials 4.x and then comparing it to a suite of future products or modern products, the gap analysis isn't this product versus that product. It's let's look at Geocortex Essentials 4 and look at a modern equivalent, whether that come in the form of a standalone product or a viewer framework replacement. So we're trying to build a really high-level gap analysis for you here. So let's start with Geocortex Workflow. Geocortex Essentials 4X has a workflow capability. We have replaced that capability with Geocortex Workflow, the standalone modern product. And Geocortex Workflow has surpassed functional equivalence with the workflow capability in Geocortex Essentials. It's more capable. Similar story with printing. Geocortex Essentials has a printing capability. We've offered a brand new standalone product called Geocortex Printing, and it has also surpassed functional equivalence. By the way, I'm using this word functional equivalence to mean the application capabilities can do what the old capability was able to do, but it might mean that it's a slightly different user experience. So we're not using the word feature parity very intentionally. We're using functional equivalence. Same story with Geocortex Reporting. Essentials has a reporting capability, brand new product, surpassed functional equivalence. Now, Geocortex Essentials has something called data linking. This is where you can connect your spatial data sources to non-spatial tables from SQL Server or Oracle in order for users to display that information in the map or to search that information and then find the corresponding features. We are going to be providing a modern equivalent to that capability. We are debating the right approach. We've looked at using workflow to accommodate that. We've looked at using some of the architectural tenets of our new access control product, which sits as a proxy to ArcGIS Server to do that. So there's some technological debate going on. What's certain is that we will be offering a functional equivalent sometime next year. Geocortex Essentials has instant search. I know a lot of you have taken advantage of that, sitting on top of an Elasticsearch database. And we have a modern equivalent standalone product called Geocortex Search coming in 2021. We think you'll be very pleased with the architectural choices that we've made, surpasses the functionality of Geocortex Essentials Instant Search, but also the administrator user experience. Saved projects is a very valuable feature for a lot of our organizations, a lot of our customers. Now, the way that we want to address this one is with capabilities directly within Geocortex Web. So you can expect features and functionality in the web product itself to address the ability to save projects that you can share with other users, for example. Geocortex Essentials has security, allowing you to control fine-grained permissions on things like layers and attributes. And Geocortex Access Control is a standalone product which has surpassed functional equivalence when it comes to securing data. We don't have plans, and I want to make kind of call this out separately, to replace the authentication features of Geocortex Essentials 4X, which is to say, in Geocortex Essentials 4X, we have the ability to authenticate users from a variety of different formats. And in Geocortex Web and our modern products, we are signing in users using their ArcGIS identity if security is required. Geocortex Essentials collaboration was used by a small fraction of our customers. We haven't developed a strong enough business case to create a modern replacement for this, but please let us know if we're wrong and this is a critical piece of functionality for you. Our Geocortex mobile app framework, which is part of Geocortex Essentials, has been replaced by Geocortex Mobile. Today, Geocortex Mobile is more capable than Geocortex mobile app framework, as well as far more performant and stable. What about developers that want to extend or integrate Geocortex Essentials into third-party systems or add custom functionality to it? We've recently released a developer center at developers.geocortex.com, and this is far and away a superior developer experience. So if you're wanting to extend Geocortex Web, integrate it with third-party systems, I encourage you to visit the developer center to learn more about how to do that. Now, the management tool behind Geocortex Essentials is called Geocortex Essentials Manager. The modern equivalent is Geocortex Web Designer. I hope you'll agree that we feel it's a far superior experience for configuring features that are available in Geocortex Web today. I can't say that it surpassed functional equivalence yet because we haven't got all of the features ported over to Geocortex Web itself. But the user experience, the design experience, what the administrator gets and receives is surpassing what we were able to do in Manager. So this brings us to our final point. What about the viewer itself? This is where we've packed in all of those functionalities, tools and features in the toolbar, advanced layerless controls, those kinds of things. Those, of course, will find their equivalents in Geocortex Web itself, the viewer framework. Right now, our estimation is that we're at about 25% of functional equivalence between Geocortex Web and Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. That estimation comes from a feature matrix that we've brought up. It's not an exact science. Some features are bigger than other features. It's not also just based on the pure count of features that we've accommodated, but it's a rough estimation of about where we are. So let's drive a little bit further into this topic about how far along we are and where we're going in terms of the viewer-to-viewer functional equivalence conversation. So this is the picture of Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. Think of the circle being the total scope of it. This is Geocortex Web. The circle is the total scope of the features and capabilities in it. So today, as I mentioned, we feel we're about 25% of the way to functional equivalence with Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. But it's really important to highlight that we've spent a lot of our energy on innovations and new things that you can do in Geocortex Web that were never before possible in the Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. Now, if we fly into the future a little bit and look to the first quarter of 2021, approximately 6 to 9 months from now, we see that the circle for Geocortex Web has grown into a dramatically larger oval. We're going to be prioritizing the key capabilities in this overlap. So when we work on features that sit in this functional equivalence roadmap, they'll be the ones that we feel are the most important for our users to be able to move their applications over. But we're also making sure that we balance our investments so that we put energy and efforts into the parity gap and the functional equivalence, but an equal amount and sometimes greater amount of investment into the net new innovations that you could never do before with Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. Another thing to point out here is that Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 itself will continue to be maintained. We continue to work on quality and performance and minor improvements, but you won't see this circle grow. You won't see net new big functionality coming into Geocortex Essentials 4X and Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. If we go forward another 12 months into the first quarter of 2022, this is where we feel we will have largely completed the functional equivalence project. There will still be some outstanding gap. We're going to leave behind a couple of things. These will be, in our assessment, the less popular features. We look to you for your feedback on this. Things that were developed into Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 but not widely adopted or barely used at all. The big picture, though, the takeaway here from all of this is the size of the oval for Geocortex Web is far greater than the size of the circle for Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 ever was. The total scope of what we're building is greater, and it's going to be a far more capable, feature-rich product on the whole. So what about timing? How do we time your upgrade? Well, today, we have witnessed that many organizations are deploying Geocortex Web alongside Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. Jake might be an example. He probably still has some Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 apps, but he's using Geocortex Web for his AirBNB app. So consider Geocortex Web for new applications, especially if those new applications call for some of the new capabilities that are available in Web. By Q1 2021, we think that many applications could be upgraded with functional equivalence. And that's because, again, the gap that we will have accommodated is the most popular or the most significant features in Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. By Q1 2022, advanced applications with super rich functionality are replaceable. Think about Atlas. The rich kitchen sink style applications with layer catalogs and all of the bells and whistles, that's the kind of time frame we're looking for broad functional equivalence of those types of applications. So that gives you the kind of high-level picture. Cam's going to take it from here and give you even more detail.
All right. Lots of people have been asking us for a little bit of a Geocortex Web roadmap. So this is sort of a web map, roadmap. Do it that way. All right, so what I wanted to do is just kind of walk you through the thought process. So I'm the product manager for Geocortex Web, and I wanted to walk you through some of my thinking. All this is, of course, open to feedback, and I love feedback when I get it on the communities and ideas and other places. So the first big theme that we tackled from the very first version of Geocortex Web that we released through to the 8th version that was released very, very recently, which was 5.7. The first theme was really about information presentation and visualization. Not going to read out all the bullets, but you get the idea just from the weight of this slide. There was a lot to do to make sure that you could visualize information well and see it. The second big theme, and these are roughly in order, we wanted to get most of theme 1 done before we moved on to theme 2, was about adding end user information to the application. So you can see a few of the things that have been added there and some of the things that we're working on right now. For example, being able to add file-based data to the map, being able to plot coordinates on the map as an end user. As we move through these themes, we start getting into more of the Web GIS-y part. Yeah, I'm going to let you go ahead and advance slides, Drew. I'll just tell you when. So theme 3, getting information out of the application. So this is actually being able not just to add my information to it, but get it back out. We currently have the capability to download results to CSV, Excel, and shapefiles, and you will see future functionality here as well. So that's kind of theme 3. Now theme 4, next slide, is interesting because I would argue that even though I have it in the position 4, feedback I'm getting in the communities are actually this probably should be theme 3. So we've started working now on out-of-the-box add feature and edit feature tool. You'll see those coming. And then as we move further into the future for theme 5, you're getting more into the heavier enterprise web GIS pieces. So being able to deal with multiple result sets and some of the set operations around those. The query builders and filter builders, which are quite complicated UI things that for some users are really important, but it's not everyone. So The direction we're moving from theme 1 through theme 5 is illustrated there. That's one view of this. But if we continue going, what I also wanted to do is just say, if you're interested, if you're sitting at your desk going, I potentially want to build something with Geocortex Web, but does it do this yet? There is a spreadsheet that I keep and I update with every single version that will pop open in just a second. Here it is. And this is very much a feature by feature view of Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 versus Geocortex Web. And as you scroll down here, Drew, when you get to markup, navigation, layer list, application, there we go, markup. So here's an example, right? Do we have some markup redlining tools today in Geocortex Web? Yes, we do. Do we have everything we're going to build? No, we don't. So if you have a specific use case and you're trying to decide, do I actually want to start with web today? This is a place that you can come and say, oh, yeah, I don't actually have text markup yet on my application. So, all right. Back to our slides. I also just want to encourage you to bookmark the What's New page for web, which is where we put our release notes. We are releasing this product every 2 months. So every 2 months, there's new capabilities, new features coming out. It can be a little hard to keep track of all that. Also, we have a fairly active community around Geocortex Web. So we have an ideas page where you can contribute your ideas. Those are the release notes there. And you can see actually, Jake, there you go. One of our presenters has got a suggestion up there. Drew, I think you better upvote him though. I think we owe him that. There we go. Now he's got 140 points. This is a place as product managers that we come often to understand the kinds of things that you're looking for, what ideas you have for our various products. So I really encourage you to look at that. There's a lot of interaction both with myself and actually with the development team, both in the ideas and also in the communities itself, where you can ask questions about the products. You know, how do I do this? How do I do that? You can see, you know, things like editing a feature layer, how do I do custom themes and branding, things like that. So those are all great resources that you can take advantage of, and you can see interaction with our team there. So definitely keep track of that. If you want a copy of this matrix spreadsheet, just reach out and ask. As I said, it does get updated every couple of months with new capabilities. In terms of strategies to get ready, Drew touched on this briefly already. For almost all the capabilities that you're currently using within the Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 that were part of Essentials version 4, there are now modern equivalents. And a great way to get ready to move your application from the Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 to Geocortex Web is actually to begin to replace those capabilities. Rewrite and redesign your workflows, for example, using the modern Geocortex workflow. Same with prints, same with reports. Not only do you get the advantage of access to a number of new capabilities, being able to print vector tile layers, for example, or rotate maps, but it's also just a great practice for getting ready to use Geocortex Web because Geocortex Web uses all those capabilities. We do want to call to you that you're not alone. Lots of you, as you're starting to look at this, have reached out to our professional services group just to kind of get a few tips and tricks and get started. Really encourage you to build, or at least consider building, new apps with Geocortex Web and to develop some of that in-house experience. And then there is also training available on a lot of our 5 series newer capabilities and modern Geocortex technologies. So that's,
if you don't mind, Cam, I just want to chime in on this one just for a second here. You know, our messaging up until this point had been you can use new products alongside existing capabilities, but we want to be really clear today that our message to you now is it's time to replace them. It's time to really look at the workflows, reports, and print templates you've built Geocortex Essentials for and look at replacing them with the modern technology so that you're ready for the future. And then to that second bullet, we have, to my visibility and awareness, worked with a number of organizations, both direct customers and through our resellers, to ports, in some cases 2-3 workflows, complex workflows, but in other cases I'm aware we've helped our customers migrate or replace hundreds of workflows. So we can do that really efficiently, and our professional services team is there to help.
Fantastic. All right, we're getting close to time. So I wanted to cover off a really common question is, what can you do with Geocortex Web today? So if I want to get started, the first thing I want to call out, and we already saw a fantastic example of this today, is dashboard applications complete with charts and KPI cards. This is net new capability. These are things that you were never able to do with Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. Many of you requested this type of functionality when we were building the Geocortex Viewer for HTML5. So dashboards are a great way to start. Next slide, Drew. Here's an example of a dashboard that we presented in our show and tell a couple weeks back. 3D data, and particularly 2D and 3D data visualization interaction, is a key thing because Geocortex Web is based on Esri's latest JavaScript API. You've got native 3D support. That can either be toggleable or, as the next example shows, kind of side-by-side views for managing both 2D and 3D data. So if you have needs around 3D data, then that's a great place to get started with Geocortex Web. Also want to talk about embedded, fast, lightweight map views. Often, and again, people have done this with the Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 in the past, but you want to embed a simple app directly in a web page. Web is particularly good at this. We've actually got a default embedded mode specifically for web for doing this that includes things like not trapping you inside the map with your mouse wheel. And so that's a great use case to start with if you have a need for that. A couple other things to call out here. If you have an app that needs to do extensive integration with other business systems and you're just about to kick something like that off, Geocortex Web took everything we ever learned about the Geocortex Viewer for HTML5 when it comes to integration and what the pattern should be for integration, what all the hooks and the SDKs and the APIs need to look like. And when we built it again, we really paid attention to those things. So Web is a great platform for doing integration with other business systems if that's a big part of an app that you're looking at. Also wanted to talk about migrating legacy apps. Most of us who are dealing with our end users know that sometimes when you're moving off an older technology and you're trying to replace it with something that's modern, maybe the old one's not supported anymore, a big challenge can be that your end users are just used to the app looking a certain way. They're used to a particular layout. The button should be over here. And with the Geocortex Viewer for HTML5, you don't have a lot of flexibility over where things live. But with Geocortex Web, you really do. It's usually possible to mock up a very visually similar application using web when you're migrating. So that might be a use case to consider. And then multi-layout apps. This is a brand new concept with Geocortex Web where you can transform the entire layout or look and feel of the app depending on the current task. So maybe when I'm out looking to do an inspection, I see a map and a list of my inspections and helps me navigate. Once I actually start an inspection, I don't really need that map anymore. I just want a big form, and that kind of switching back and forth in UI is something that web is really, really good at. So all these 6 use cases are there. Drew, over to you for the summary.
Sorry to cut you off, Cam. I'm just trying to be cognizant.
Yeah, I know. More time. Go.
Tons of content back in. So let's just summarize everything we went over. Geocortex Essentials is unbundled into a suite of products. That's been our strategy for a few years. We're there now. Our message is to start upgrading capabilities to the modern product equivalents today. Talk to us if you need help with that. Consider using Geocortex Web today for new apps. That was the last point that Cam was just covering. We're continuing to work on web. We've got, our biggest team is working on this, and it's going to evolve rapidly with releases every 2 months. It's feature parity work or functional equivalency work, as I put it earlier, and new innovations. So look for improvements in both areas. It will not be functionally equivalent to Essentials until early 2022. Just if you want to think about those more advanced applications, that's a timeline that you can consider. And our professional services team is here to help you plan and fast track your upgrade. So tons of content packed in, and we know we went a little over time, but really appreciate your attendance, and hopefully we've started to answer those big questions for you. Let's open it up.
Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Cam. I just want to jump off here before we move into the question period and just wrap up the formal portion of this. We will move to questions next, but to respect everyone's time, I just want to thank you. Thank you for making this series what it's been. The feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. It's great at a time where we're all being challenged in new ways to go back to what we know, what we're doing well, and connecting with the community that we're all involved with. So thank you so much. These recordings will be made available via our YouTube channel next week. You will get an email with a link to the recording. And again, an invitation for you to share your application with us in the next installment of the series that'll take place in the fall. Please send me an email at info@latitudegeo.com if that's something that you'd be open to doing. We'd love to have you. Until then, check us out at the Esri User Conference and our Road Ahead webinar in July. Take care. Bye-bye now.